We have one more special talk that I'm very excited about before lunch. So right now I'm gonna invite to the stage Vikki, Yaffe. Come up and join us.
I did say yesterday that the thing that I would do is be a dance instructor, so there you go, dream fulfilled. Thank you. So let's talk about time. We tend to think of time as a commodity, something we have to spend. So what does your time budget look like? What are your biggest expenses? What are the things you keep meaning to buy? For me, viewing time as a commodity led me to working 100-plus-hour weeks, led me to skip out on a honeymoon because I didn't want to miss the first day of a business program I was in, led me to ignore life-saving alerts as I sat in the office one night at 10 p.m., and led me to have 2 to 3 social plans every night. We are oppressed by the social contract that time is a commodity, that everything we want, we pay indirectly or directly with our time. Time is the answer to all of our problems, and there's never enough of it. I didn't want to work 100-hour weeks. I didn't want to have an overstuffed social calendar. But I was taught that this was how I set my future self up for success. So at one point, my time budget looked like this. I would wake up at 5 a.m., I would walk for 2 hours to the office because the tube in London is not the vibe. I would go straight to the gym, and then I would grind it out till late lunch, go to the gym again, then grind it out till after work, go to the gym again, or after work drinks, or dinner with friends, or all of the above, because I just had to avoid wasting time by doing nothing. And I was rewarded for this. I was celebrated. Vikki has it all. I paid for my relationships and love with time. I paid for my friendships with time. I paid for success with time. And I got them. But at what cost? I lost myself. I lost knowing myself. I lost communicating with myself. I lost years of my life following a rule book successfully that wasn't built with me in mind. It was built for me to be a producer or a consumer. It was built for me to benefit others. It wasn't built for creative thought. It wasn't built for joy. It was not built for Vikki. Ooh, it's hard remembering that. Wasn't built for Vikki. I was miserable. I was just really unhappy. And I was so busy, I didn't realize it. And this is what time oppression looks like. So I'm Vikki. I'm the CEO of Time Hackers. And we are taking on the entire time management industry that in its most modern form was built off the back of slavery, off the back of the Industrial Revolution, that was built to exploit people, not support them. We help individuals and teams all over the world achieve more faster, and not in spite of sustainable life and business practices, but because of them. We stop centering time, which is, by the way, a fixed, known, limited resource, and start centering humans who are not limited. So all of us in this room have at some point been taught that time is a commodity and that it's there to spend, so we allocate it out. Our calendars are overfull, our days are busy, our weeks are stressful, and no matter how much we get done today, we're still behind tomorrow. And then there's thousands of solutions out there that are telling us they're going to be the answer. They're going to help us manage this commodity better. But what if time isn't a commodity? We're taught to spend it to get what we want. What if time's a resource and we were taught to protect it, to create excess space? Space so we can truly rest. Space so we can know ourselves. Space so we can have deeper, meaningful relationships with other people. Space to be able to say yes to last-minute opportunities and invitations. And space to take care of ourselves when we feel ill or sick or life happens. Like, imagine this. Imagine not having to shuffle around 5, 10, or hundreds of things when life happened to you. different, right? This is what time liberation looks like. Time liberation looks like taking 3 months off because it's summer. It looks like working a 15-hour week as full-time. It looks like saying no to the industry-wide request, the company-wide request, hopefully not the industry-wide request, but it does happen, the company-wide request to come in an hour earlier. It looks like taking a solo trip, getting on a plane, coming across the pond, leaving my laptop and my little one behind to be here today. So what did it take for you guys to get here? Were you always going to come? Was there a risk at some point that you wouldn't make it? What were the negotiations that had to happen, the compromises that had to happen, the conversations that had to happen, the things that had to be shuffled around and moved? Like, how much work was it? And not just today, but do you have time for what you value? Do you have to find time for what you value? Do you have to create time for what you value? What's the work involved there? Because it's my belief that our time budget, that thing we spoke about earlier, should reflect our values. Not the values that we've been told are right, not the values that we've been told make us a good parent, a good partner, a good CEO, not the values that we've been told we should have, but the values that make us, us. The values that mean that my time budget and your time budget look very different, even if on paper we're both CEOs, we're both parents, we're both partners. This is time liberation, but it comes at a price. You have to put down the award for the fastest email responder. You have to resign from the role of always available and works longest hours. But what do we gain? Space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to connect. Space to create. Space to innovate. Space to learn. And space to be. So, what percentage of your time is in alignment with your values right now? Like, really think about it. 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, 60%? What will your time liberation look like? Like, I encourage every person to write down one thing right now. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to hold you to it. But one thing that your time liberation might include. And are you willing to create the excess space to make it inevitable? So time is our resource. And how we view our time is really about how we view ourselves. This was not a talk about time. This was not a talk about time liberation. This was a talk about humans. This was a talk about our liberation. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if y'all caught what she said about 15-hour work weeks, but that's what we're going to start with. Because you said 15-hour full-time, right? So I remember when we met, met a while ago now, and you said, I was like, I've been obsessed with everything, ever since. Share a little bit really, though, about like what that actually looks like and means.
Yeah, so my background was economics, and Keynes predicted that by 2030 we would have a 15-hour work week. And at some point I decided I want to try that. This was 2021. So I did. So now it looks like I've got a 2-year-old. So it looks like being able to have a bad night's sleep and go straight to bed in the morning. It looks like prioritizing the most high-value work and not letting my brain doesn't have capacity. My time is not there for it to overthink and doubt things. It looks like moving messy. It looks like doing things imperfectly. It looks like failing forward and learning as you go. But it looks like wild creativity. I think about, and all my team work 15 hours, and I think about what we achieve in such a small time as such a small team. And obviously this isn't going to surprise you that I credit that space, I credit that time for our brains to think, not in the project, but it's working for us when we let it breathe.
I think that something like a 15-hour work week sounds like one of the, and I've seen the kind of expressions on people's face when we, talk about different types of alternative work schedules, whether we're talking about 15 or 20 or a 4-day work, there's all kinds of things that people are exploring. And I think for entrepreneurs and leaders, they're like, yeah, I can do that. And when it comes to thinking about, but my team, do you mean I'm paying people for full time to work 15 hours a week? That feels like such a different hurdle to jump.
Right, because we still think that we're paying for people's time, but we're not. We're paying for the results. So how do you facilitate and support your team to create excellent results?
Yeah.
For me, my experience, my theory, my hypothesis is my team produced better results by working less. It can't just be true for me. If it was really true for me, it would be true for others. So I think it's it's one thing to say, I want to work a 15-hour work week. But for me, working a 15-hour week isn't just because I want time freedom and I want to do what I want when I want. And, I want to watch Netflix in the middle of the day. It's really a belief that I have that we are overworked. Think about how much technology has moved forward. Right? Technology does so much for us now. And instead of saying, oh, technology is doing a lot of the legwork, let me turn down, we're competing with technology. We're I can go fast, I can go faster.
Right.
Instead of let the technology do the thing. The one thing that technology cannot do, that we can do, is operate from our brains. Our brains are a resource. How are we taking care of them? Are we taking care of them?
And also the values. The technology can't account for your values.
Yes.
How has it been, because you train many people to do this work, how has it been in terms of coaching other people to adopt this and their mindset challenges? What are the things that you often kind of come up against and what helps to resolve that,
Yes.
the tension there?
So for the 15 hours or for the,
Yeah.
Okay. Essentially the big thing that we have to realize is the 40-hour work week was just someone's decision. There's no, and by the way, it was created to reduce the work day 100 years ago. So how have we not figured out that we can continue to reduce it since then, given the advancements in technology and the speed at which things can get done? I always think imagine me trying to be here, 50 years ago. This would not be happening. I would still be on a boat, I don't know. So we have to understand that we are able to operate much faster, and just because the world is operating much faster doesn't mean our brains are. We actually have to intentionally slow them down, intentionally create space. Otherwise we are, many of us have experienced this. I know I experienced this. We are burning out. We are more anxious. We are more attached to what Stephanie was saying. We're more attached to doing more and achieving more and getting all there as much as possible. And we are missing out on the experience of life. And when did these things compete? Who decided that having a family competes with being successful at work?
Yeah.
No one in this room. I always say, if becoming a parent was if men did it, they would get promoted afterwards. They'd be look at all these skills you've developed.
Right.
For us, it's oh, I don't know if you can do your job anymore. I don't know.
Do you think there are limits to this? I think that this is one of the other challenges that I hear often with clients who are exploring alternative work weeks. But what about customer service? What if somebody emails and nobody's sitting at the desk? What about this kind of job, or what about that kind of? People always want to find all these, all these impossibilities. What do you think about that?
I think we should let people choose. I don't want to be the decider of how everyone in the economy works. So you get to, I always say, you're the expert of you. You're the expert of how you work. A lot of people used to say, what does your 15-hour work week look like? As though it's it's 9 till 12 every day or whatever. And it's not. That's not how I operate. So I would say, firstly, I think people just need to be able to choose, and hopefully what this does is invite a conversation for people to think, that's what I said to you, what does your time liberation looks like? Because it doesn't look like mine. That's not liberation, that's Vikki's rules. And the second thing I would say, it's interesting you mentioned customer service, and I think we are always excusing it, but why do people need an immediate response? I always say, every email is just going to create another email. It's not going to get the thing done. There's no end to this. So why do we think faster is better? It's less about the industry and more about the individual. Do you want this? Does this sound appealing to you? And what's your reasons why? If it's like, I don't want this, I could never do this because I'm terrified of having space and doing nothing, like me a few years ago, well, that's not going to be a reason to not do it. But if it's like, you know, right now this feels expansive and something I want to lean into, and I don't know, even like I'm doing a live event and a retreat and that feels different to me. So allowing that flexibility.
What insight can you give us about identifying the places in our work that maybe need to be passed off or digitized somehow, and like what we decide are our priorities?
Yes. And I actually think the first thing most of us need to do is delete things, because I think if you start delegating, and I did this when I first hired someone, was like, oh, I can do more. And it stops us thinking. Like, when you have less time, you are forced into making a decision your brain doesn't want to make. Your brain's like, I could just avoid these decisions and keep working longer hours. This is great. So I would really say the first spot is almost like, what am I going to be deleting? Because I'm not just going to hand it over just because I can. And then it's all a lot of experimentation, right? Like, so for example, for me, I was telling this to someone today, I love to make decisions through a framework of like, what's the worst case that I definitely don't want to happen? Like, what thing do I definitely want to avoid? And let me make a decision based off of that. Like, what price am I not willing to pay in this decision? But the main thing that has allowed my team to operate this way, that's allowed me to grow and expand and my business to succeed and evolve so fast, is that experimentation mindset. So you have to be willing to decide. And by the way, how you operate. I mean, I operate differently every day of the week, every month. Like, there's no predictability. If I was like, you know, I'm always going to be the one. We've had this with social media. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do social media, but I actually kind of like doing reels. So I'm going to dip in and out. And then I was like, okay, this is going to be messy because I do want to do this sometimes. So there we go. It's like being willing to experiment and being willing to, we're always willing to add more things. You have to be willing to let things go. To say, oh, shit, we definitely want to do that, by the way. And I think that's the problem. We're not willing to let things go even for a short time.
Yeah. And my last question is, if you're only working 15 hours a week, what are you doing with the rest of your time?
Yeah. There's a lot of rest, a lot of baby cuddles, a lot of walking and times in nature, I also like Netflix. I also love reading. I also love dancing, to no one's surprise. I thought that was what I was here to do. Yes. And also a lot of the unknown. I mean, I also love to travel. So I love that I can travel and not take a laptop and not be in work mode at all. Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing for me. It's less about like, what does every week look like? I'm more like the macro level. What does my life look like? Yeah. And it's travel. It's being here, not just financially, but time-wise. Right. This is not an easy, to come overseas for a few days. Like, not everyone has the space to do that. And what would be different in the world if we did?
Yeah, and some folks find the space, but only by packing the week before and packing the week after. Yeah. Like, there's this cost to these things. So you're not talking about just like having flexibility at all. You're talking about really organizing your life to maximize for space.
Exactly, and that's a really good point. Like, I think, everyone's like, oh, I need a vacation by the time I go on it, and then I need one when I come home. Well, that's not working. That's not what we need.
Yeah. All right, Vikki, I want to thank you for being here. It was great. So good. All right.